Welcome to Oops, I Adulted, the podcast where we discuss uncomfortable truths with uncomfortable jokes. We're here to remind you that adulting doesn't need to be serious and grim. It can also be happy and funny, just with back pain.
Welcome back to Oops, I Adulted, the politics edition, where we're still trying to figure out which countries are currently speaking to each other. And today we're diving into international relations, which basically is high school drama just with nuclear consequences. Have you ever noticed that when we talk about countries, they're like our moody roommates? It's like Russia's feeling threatened, China's pursuing its interests, and America wants to maintain its leadership position. It's like the United Nations is just one big group therapy session where everyone's describing their feelings while secretly building missiles under the couch. Well, let's start with some of history's most awkward international moments, shall we? This is all about diplomatic disasters and uncomfortable successes. First up, the Treaty of Versailles, or as I like to call it, history's most passive-aggressive breakup agreement that guaranteed a second worst breakup. After World War I, the victorious Allies basically handed Germany a bill for the entire war, along with a note saying, "It's not us, it's definitely you," according to Marx in 2013. Historians and economists like Keynes describe the treaty as imposing humiliation on Germany, creating emotional resentment that fueled revanchist nationalism. What's fascinating is that we describe an entire country as feeling humiliated, as if 60 million Germans simultaneously experienced the exact same emotion, according to Keynes, and this was way back in 1920. As historian Alan Sharp in 2018 points out, this humiliation thesis attributes human emotional responses to an entire nation-state, completely ignoring the diverse reactions within German society. But hey, it's easier to say Germany was angry than various political factions within the complex social structure of post-war Germany exploited economic grievances to promote nationalist ideologies. Hey, the first one fits on a bumper sticker. Alright, then we have the Cold War, wherein two superpowers giving each other the silent treatment for 40 years while collecting increasingly dangerous toys. According to Cold War historian John Lewis Gaddis in 2006, describes the US-Soviet relationship in explicitly interpersonal terms, like rivals engaged in a contest of wills, experiencing periods of tension, détente, and mistrust.
Wow.
It's like that passive-aggressive relationship where you're not technically fighting, but nobody's talking either. Aww. Well, it kind of sounds like, I don't have a problem with your nuclear missiles in Turkey. Well, comrade, I don't have a problem with your nuclear missiles in Cuba. Good. Fine. Good. Fine. And just like that, everybody builds more bombs. And of course, we can't forget the United Nations, essentially a group chat where everyone's notifications are turned on, but responses are completely optional. In 2004, international relations scholars Barnett and Finnemore point out how we talk about the UN as if it's a single person with a personality, calling it ineffective, paralyzed, or idealistic. But the UN is just a complex institutional structure reflecting diverse member state interests. It's like blaming The Office for a bad decision when it really just was Kevin from accounting who messed up the spreadsheet. Now let's talk about how countries interact economically, which is just as personal and petty as you'd expect as we go adulting across borders. First up, sanctions, which political scientist Dan Drezner in 1999 describes as punishing or pressuring target states.
Secure the perimeter.
Oh yeah. Sanctions are just like refusing to share your toys, but on a scale that actually hurts innocent people. Ouch. It kind of sounds like, Iran won't return my calls about this nuclear issue, so I'm going to make it impossible for them to get medicine. Aww. It is the international equivalent of I'm not inviting them to my birthday party, and I'm telling everyone else not to go either. Oh well, the funny thing is, research shows sanctions rarely work as intended. Political scientist Robert Pape in 1997 analyzed decades of sanctions and found they almost never achieved their major goals. Yet we keep using them, like that passive-aggressive note you leave on your office mate's leftover pizza. It's like, I noticed, this has been here for 5 days. Not effective, but it makes you feel like you did something. And now there's a hot topic on trade agreements, where contracts that determine whether your avocados cost a reasonable $1 or a ridiculous $5. According to Gilpin's research in 2001, we talk about countries competing or negotiating, even protecting their economic interests like they're individual shoppers at a farmer's market. But as political economist Robert Rogowski in 1989 points out, different sectors, classes, and regions within a country experience completely different outcomes from the same trade policies. So when you read something about saying America signed a trade deal, we should really say a specific configuration of interest groups successfully lobbied politicians to approve a complex set of regulations that will benefit a certain industry while potentially harming others. Yeah, but that doesn't fit in a tweet, so America it is.
Hello there, fellow reluctant adults. Just taking a quick break to ask a favour from you and your friends to hit those like, follow and share buttons while you listen. It inspires us to research the things you probably didn't want to know. And now, back to pretending we understand life and its mysteries.
Now let's discuss news literacy, meaning that headline, tensions rising between countries, could mean anything from strongly worded letters to a submarine being deployed. In 1976, political scientist Robert Jervis wrote a whole book about how assumptions about other states' psychology leads to massive misperceptions. We interpret other countries' actions based on what we think they're thinking or feeling. As if France is a person with a mood disorder rather than a complex nation of 67 million individuals. So the next time you read China is aggressively expanding, remember that's just like saying the entire Johnson family is in a bad mood. When really it's just Dad who's grumpy because his fantasy football team lost.
Hey, you boys, best keep sweating out there.
Up next, let's talk about geographical frenemies, where territorial issues bring out the most human-like behaviors in countries. So imagine this. Border disputes are basically countries fighting over invisible lines, like neighbors arguing over who should trim the tree branch that crosses the property line. In 2003, political geographer Thomas Forsberg points out how we use property and body metaphors when talking about territory, like states claiming land, defending borders, or protecting their territorial integrity.
Secure the perimeter.
So now think about this. The South China Sea dispute is the ultimate neighborhood fence fight, but with battleships.
We're under attack.
As Robert Kaplan in 2014 describes it, China's building artificial islands is characterized as extending its reach, while neighboring states are standing their ground or pushing back.
Watch your six.
If you can't think about it, think of it this way. It's like that neighbor who keeps moving the property marker 2 inches onto your lawn every night, but instead of passive-aggressive lawn ornaments, there are aircraft carriers involved.
Entering hostile territory.
Oh well, ocean territory claims are the international equivalent of "my towel was here first" and a crowded beach. According to Hayton in 2014, imagine fighting over a pebble because it gives you rights to the entire swimming pool. Because under maritime law, countries can claim waters extending 200 nautical miles from their shores. That's right. This leads to ridiculous situations where tiny islands become incredibly valuable, not for the land itself, but for the massive ocean territory they grant. And then we have regional alliances, where friend groups with complicated histories who still have to invite each other to parties. In 1987, political scientist Stephen Walt describes alliances in explicitly social terms, like friendship or partnership, even alignment between states. So think of it this way. NATO is like that group chat where some friends are super active, and others just read the messages without responding. But then everybody shows up when someone's having a crisis. So lastly, why do we keep talking about countries like they're people? In 1980, cognitive linguists Lakoff and Johnson explained that we understand abstract concepts through more concrete domains of experience. In other words, international politics is so complicated that our brains simplify it by applying the rules of human relationships. With this mental shortcut, it helps us predict behavior. If a state has been humiliated, it may seek revenge, or if threatened, it might lash out defensively. According to Crawford's research in 2000, it also lets us make moral judgments where states can be aggressive, responsible, or deceitful. Without these human metaphors, international relations would just be a very confusing mess of structural forces and bureaucratic procedures. And who wants to talk about that at parties? As we draw on to a close, just imagine international relations seems complicated until you realize it's just human drama with better outfits and more serious consequences. In 1999, political scientist Alexander Wendt famously said, "States are people too." Not literally, of course, but in how we understand them. And so, your homework. Next time you read international news, try replacing country names with people you know. Like, Dave has announced sanctions against Tina after she refused to return the debt she owes. See? Politics is just personal grudges with a budget. This has been Oops, I Adulted, reminding you that borders are just made up, but the feelings we project onto them are very real. Until next time, remember, diplomacy is just the adult version of I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And nobody believes that either.
Well, that's all the adulting we can handle for this episode. If you've made it this far, we understand if you were not sleeping and were only resting your eyes, so congratulations. You're better at this than we are. We're hoping you learned something new just as we did. After all, that's what adulting is all about. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next episode.